Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. And tonight I'm just gonna, talk about whatever comes to my mind. The first thing that I want to kind of get off my chest or talk about is this Mercury retrograde we just went through. And let's just get a definition. In astrology, what is a Mercury retrograde and what are the typical characteristics of it? So I looked it up earlier. As you guys know, I've never directly studied astrology. Wow, my microphone reset itself. That is weird. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I've never directly studied astrology. I've never sit down and read an astrology book or anything like that. And that's not because I don't think it's real. I do think it's real. It's just that as I keep saying on the Talamanca Review, I've had this philosophy my whole life where I think that at the beginning of any and through in the middle, and all searches are for the presence of this great stillness and this great being inside of us, and especially in our hearts. And I think any inquiry and any study subordinate to that is really not worth it. Not to. I gotta be so careful what I say. I don't want to offend anybody, but not to diminish the study of astrology. I found when I did Robert Phoenix's show, the reading he did based on my chart. I gave him my birthday and my birth time and where I was born. I think they just need the time zone, right? Like Eastern Standard or whatever. But I gave him all that, and the reading was very, very accurate. Very, very accurate. And so from this understanding, you can go two ways. Okay? Well, actually three. I shouldn't, I have this tendency to explain things in a sort of binary way, but it's not always binary. So there's three ways you can go. You can go deep into astrology, and you can use it to try to create material benefit in your life. You can use it as a form of business. You can do readings for people. Top-notch astrologers, I don't know what they charge, but I think the really, really good ones, it could be a couple thousand for a reading, which is a good profession, right? It's better than being a chiropractor, or probably better than being a dentist. Now, the self-interested person who studied astrology or uses astrologers would use the information for maximum personal benefit. And this, I'm absolutely convinced that astrology and forms of divination are used on Wall Street, are used by the traders at the Nikkei Index in Japan, on Fleet Street in London, on Bay Street in Toronto, and whatever the big commercial trading banking street is in Australia, whatever city it's in, probably Sydney, I would imagine. They have their version of Wall Street there. And these streets are generally where the big stock exchange is, and there's a lot of banks will have their head offices there. Really, these banking centers have come to define the center of all major Western metropolises now. In a sense, you could say, without being hyperbolic, without exaggerating, that banks are the new temples. because it used to be villages were built around the holy site, whatever it is, the temple, the mosque, that persists here in Costa Rica. And so you've got the biggest and fanciest building in any town in Costa Rica will invariably be the Catholic Church, which should also tell you something. Okay? So it should tell you that, Catholicism is really another form of banking, is one way of interpreting it. And another way of interpreting it would be that, they want to be the center of every city or every town. I shouldn't say the cities, because when you get into the larger cities, there are some decent buildings there. But even when you get into the larger cities like Cartago and Heredia and San Jose, many of the most magnificent buildings are still the churches there. Beautiful, beautiful buildings, the Catholic churches. And so astrology can be used for personal aggrandizement, for the aggregation of wealth. And I don't know how people who do this would rationalize it, though. Okay, because the basic spiritual principle is, to take what you need for you and your family. But that hasn't been lived by for a long time now. Everybody is into making and making and making and making more money. It has become like the religion in the West, making money, making money, making money. And everybody who comes here, even from other cultures, even if they allege to be religious, they get into the whole money game as well. So it's a very interesting thing. And so astrology would be used for personal aggrandizement. A modest way of using it would be to direct yourself through your life in certain key areas, just to avoid problems for yourself. That would be a suitable application for astrology. It could be used in many ways to grow more, for spiritual unfoldment, if it was used a certain way. And so astrology becomes this science in a way. We don't consider these things sciences because they're not as consistent as sciences, Conductive material, water turns to vapor. It's a scientific principle, okay? That can be repeated anywhere in the world. Astrology is not quite as consistent as that, but it has what I would call a window of insight that is incredibly accurate and incredibly true. And all of this can be derived. Okay, now the main spiritual insight to be derived from astrology is that we're living in a system. Okay? We live in a system. We live in a matrix. We live in a hologram. We live in a computer simulation, some people are saying. And this is all part of the Great Awakening. And so I find that to be the most useful interpretation of astrology, is that it's further proof that we live in a system, that this is not just a random, chaotic experience down here, that there's meaning and purpose. And this, for me anyways, provides me with what I would call more spiritual incentive and more spiritual discipline and more commitment to my spiritual ideals. So it's interesting because astrology can become whatever you want it to be. So for me, it's an adjunct, when I'm trying to tell people, well, we live in a spiritual reality. I'm not telling you to believe in a particular religion or a particular God, but it would be very beneficial if you learned to pray and probably even more beneficial if you learned to meditate. And I can use astrology as a footnote, right? And say this is this, and it's amazing to me that more people don't see it that way. More people don't take the opportunity of astrology as a stepping stone to God. And again, to reiterate my position, there's nothing wrong with studying it. It's just that when you get in the consciousness game, your primary goal should be self-realization, which is the realization of yourself as the supreme being. Supreme being, your being. Okay? I mean, I don't mean to be too Jordan Maxwell about this, but there's a lot of kind of double entendre in the language, right? Double meaning in the language. So when you hear the expression supreme being as a version of God, we imagine a being, an entity or a being. But when you think about it, to be, the verb to be, I am, a state of being is a supreme being can simultaneously be something out there that is above a human, or it's inside of us. It's a state of existence in which our being is at its supreme refinement, our own internal supreme being. And throughout religion, there's all these double entendres, these double meanings. So I haven't spent a whole lot of time on astrology. I've had friends over the years who've been really, really good at it. The gentleman I wrote the Akashic record book for, very, very good with this sort of material, because time, in a sense, the 12 zodiac signs are, in a sense, the 12 hours of time on a cosmic scale. And time is sort of fed into this reality as a learning tool. It doesn't really exist at the level of our supreme being. There's no time there. We just exist in a permanent state of now. But down here, on this reality, time is here. And astrology can teach us a lot about time. So we just went through a Mercury retrograde. And so this is how I interact with astrology. So I don't keep abreast of when these retrogrades are. But when I start to notice stuff in my life, I go, man, this is getting weird. And there's so much of it. Is this a Mercury retrograde? And I'll check on the computer, I'll ask AI or something, and sure enough, we just went through a massive Mercury retrograde. I think it lasted about 20 days. It was from November 9th to November 29th. It just ended today. And I went through a Mercury retrograde in 2018 that I documented it on my radio show when I used to have my radio show. And I won't talk about that one tonight. But this particular Mercury retrograde we just went through was absolutely brutal for me. It's absolutely brutal. So before I begin my personal story, my story for tonight, let's go back to the AI question I asked and see what it gave us, okay? So in astrology, Mercury retrograde describes a period that occurs 3 to 4 times a year when the planet Mercury appears to move backward in the sky from our perspective on Earth. Since Mercury is the planet that rules communication, travel, technology, and commerce, astrologers believe these areas of life become disrupted, chaotic, or prone to errors during this time. Interestingly, today, November 29th, 2025, marks the end of a Mercury retrograde cycle. Here is a breakdown of what this period typically entails and its common characteristics. So the core concept, the astronomy, the why, it's an optical illusion. Mercury orbits the sun faster than Earth does. When it passes us, it creates a visual effect similar to a fast car passing a slower car on the highway. The slower car appears to move backward relative to the faster one, even though both are moving forward. The astrology, the meaning. Because the planet appears to be backtracking, the energy associated with it is said to turn inward or go offline. It's considered a time for rest, review, and recalibration rather than forward momentum. Typical characteristics and symptoms. During a Mercury retrograde, you will often hear people blame the following mishaps on the planet. Communication breakdowns. Emails are sent to the wrong person, texts are misunderstood, and verbal instructions are unclear. It is the classic crossed wires energy. Okay? So you remember the trip to Le Monde to do my interview with immigration? Well, my 1997 Suzuki Sidekick broke down, the engine overheated. And I haven't had it in to be serviced at the mechanic yet. I'm waiting for an appointment with the mechanic. But my brother-in-law and a couple other people took a look, and they said, the wires that manage the thermostat in the electrical system, so you would see the heating gauge on the dash, they got crossed. Somehow they got crossed. And so we couldn't tell from the dash that the engine was overheating. Now, why the engine overheated is another question. The engine had oil, the radiator had water, I don't know. But the Mercury retrograde aspect of this is the crossed wires that canceled out the panel, showing me the engine overheating. So there's one example, okay, of this Mercury retrograde. I'm also in transit, right? So they say Mercury affects travel as well. Now, it didn't interfere with this is the funny thing, because when I'm going through this Mercury retrograde, when I'm going to do things, like in transit, trying to meet schedules and trying to communicate and everything, when I'm in the process of going from A to B, the Mercury retrograde hits me like a sledgehammer. But the actual final result is splendid. So my interviews at immigration, I got what normally takes 2 appointments, they did for me in 1 day. Which is, when you understand how bureaucratic Latin America is, what happened to Rosemary and I at immigration 2 Wednesdays ago is nothing short of a miracle on par with water to wine. Okay, it was a miracle. It was a circumstance, and it, in my heart, it kind of counterbalanced the bad luck with the car. And in other ways, there have been some powerful expressions of this energy as well. So the next characteristic or symptom of Mercury retrograde is technology glitches. So computers crashing, phones breaking, data loss, or software bugs are common complaints. Okay? Just got my wife an iPhone 14 Pro Max. The screen is flickering. And it seemed, when I touched it, it seemed to be very hot compared to my iPhone 14. It seems settled down now. There's another example of what I'm talking about. In this Mercury retrograde, I had another computer monitor overheat and fry. And then when I went to get the guarantee on it, they said that, well, we see a mark on the screen, so something hit it. And I'm like, the mark is heat damage from the wires overheating inside and melting the filament of the screen. Oh, we don't accept that. We think you knocked it over. So I just have to eat $100 US and get another monitor, right? Another 27-inch monitor. Fortunately for us, the price of computer equipment is very, very cheap these days. And it's one of the more economical areas of the communication world. You can get a really good computer for less than you can get a really good phone. And a computer can do way more than a phone, okay? And when I say a really good computer, I mean a microphone, a monitor, the computer itself, a keyboard, and a mouse. So computers are very reasonably priced, but that went on as well. So it's a technology glitch. So travel delays. So flights being canceled, traffic jams, car trouble, or getting lost are typical hallmarks, okay? So I'll do communication breakdown and travel delays. So my friend Larry Bindell, regular listener of the Talamanca Review and a friend of mine for years now, going back to Revolution Radio, he was coming to visit me. Now, I thought he was coming in today, flying in today, and generally he stays one night or one afternoon and one evening in San Jose, and then he gets a bus and he comes out to where I live and we go get him in town. Well, it turns out I was wrong. It's a complete miscommunication. It turns out he was in on Tuesday. Now, in the course of getting my new phone, so this is what happened. The iPhone 14 Pro Max, which appeared to be glitching today, but I'm hoping it's okay tomorrow and this is just a Mercury retrograde thing. So we had this phone upgrade thing happen here. So I had other friends come from Portland. I have a lot of visitors now. Last 2 years, it's very rare. Well, about half the time I'm up here alone, and about half the time I've got visitors in from North America or somewhere else. And these visitors were, we met them. I met them through my son, and this is one of my son's friends. I think they met online gaming, as apparently this is the thing for Gen Z. You make your friends online. And they met here like 4 years ago. And my son's friend loves coming back here. So I think it's his 4th trip over here. And he's been into the jungle twice and slept over on the reserve. He just loves it here. This time he brought his mom. And his mom is 64. When we were coming back from the immigration appointment in Limon, we got an Uber. It was really reasonably priced. But the car sort of failed about 1 kilometer from my home. And so we had to walk the rest of the way, it's like 3 kilometers on a normal flat city street, or maybe even 4 or 5. It's a serious thing to walk here, okay? Some of the hills, I mean, they're just so steep. I mean, your legs are burning and you're drawing in air like you just sprinted. And my friend's mother, 64 years old, she has a bad knee, and she's got to walk up this hill. My wife stayed with her. I went super fast. Jason Bourne walked ahead of them, got them Ontario and came and got them. But by that time, she'd already made it up the most difficult hill. It's difficult. This hill is it's about 300 or 400 meters of continuous incline. Okay, you got to be in pretty good shape to walk these roads. So there was a travel problem. So it wasn't just the Suzuki breaking down on the way to Limon. It was the Uber not being able to get all the way up our mountain either. It's just like one thing after another. You can hardly believe what you're seeing. And this is before I knew it was a Mercury retrograde. It's just, before I looked it up. Finally, a little voice in my head said, "You should look this up, Bruce. This might be a Mercury retrograde." So one of the things with these visitors, my son's friend from Portland and his mom, they have a business and they trade their phones in every year for the latest iPhone. So my son's friend, his mom, and his uncle, who all run this business in Portland, it has to do with property maintenance. They update their phones quite regularly, and so I generally ask when he's coming over, any phones there. And yeah, my Uncle Brian has a iPhone 14 Pro Max. They offered him 425 US on trade-in for his new iPhone 17, but he decided to just keep it. And they sent it into the shop and got it refurbished when I said I wanted to buy it. I think it's like they just verify everything's working correctly and the battery has over 80% and stuff like that. So you're getting a reliable phone. So I gave my iPhone 13 mini, which I've had for 5 years, I gave it to my nephew for his 16th birthday. Loves it, okay? I took Rosemary's iPhone 14, which I got the last time Larry visited last year, or 6 or 7 months ago. So why do I always get phones? And the last Mac Mini I got was also when somebody was visiting me. It's to circumvent the tariffs in Costa Rica, which can be as high as 100%, right? So that the same phone bought in Costa Rica will cost you about 100% more, double, okay? So in giving my iPhone 13 away, before I gave it to my nephew Daner, I did the transfer to the new iPhone 14. And it transferred all my old WhatsApp contacts into the new instance, because it basically downloads your profile and then replicates the exact iPhone 13, all the apps you use, your calendar appointments, your contacts, everything. You guys know how it goes, right? I don't have to go into too much detail about this. But after a day of using it, WhatsApp crapped out and said that I had to log back in again. And you can only do this if you have a telephone number to receive the 6-digit code to verify it. So I got a voice over IP number in Canada, which costs me like $5 Canadian a month, $5.95 Canadian a month, about $4 US, unlimited US and Canada calling, and I have a Canadian number for people to reach me. And I used it as my new WhatsApp number. And then I kept the old WhatsApp number on my computer and on my iPad, which I'd already linked to the iPhone 13. So for about a week, I was getting messages from the old WhatsApp number and the new one. Now, some people caught on. My partner / boss in Canada, he picked up on it right away. The computer guys are super sharp. He said, Bruce, is this your new number? I said, yeah. I explained I got a new phone. He says, okay. Stops using the old one. My buddy Larry, who's coming to visit, he gets into town, and he doesn't send, generally when he's traveling, he'll send me an email. Like, okay, I'm at the airport in Houston. I go, okay. He didn't do any of that this time. Mercury retrograde, communication breakdown, right? So he gets all the way here on his own, and generally he's the one who introduced me to the carnivore diet. So generally when it comes to visit, he brings about 40 pounds of meat he gets from a butcher shop in San Jose, plus his luggage. So he gets to San Jose on Tuesday, and he's sending all these messages to my old WhatsApp number. And for some reason, Mercury retrograde, like 36 hours before this, I decided to change my computer and my iPad to the new WhatsApp number. Okay? And so I also lost connection to a group I belong to. That's another part to the story, I'll tell you. So Larry comes without saying anything to me, lands in San Jose, spends a night there, takes a bus, comes to Siquirres, and he's waiting at the bus station, and I'm not there. And he sent all these messages, and eventually he gets a hotel room there, has to spend a night in Siquirres, which is not a town you want to spend a night in Costa Rica, but he does. And finally gets a hold of me the next day by getting a Telegram account and finding me on Telegram. He says, Bruce, I'm here. Where were you? What the hell's going on? I said, what do you mean? I never got any messages. He goes, what are you talking about? I've been messaging you non-stop for a day and a half. And then I put it together. I go, oh shit, you're still messaging to the old WhatsApp number. And then I explain the situation to him, make all my apologies and all that stuff. And then on the old number, I was a part of a group that we have formed to run the tourism business with the natives. And an important message had come through there, which had something to do with tourism. And I didn't see it because it went to the old number. And then I get a call from my son, and he's like all over me. He's like, Dad, like, what are you doing? You know, you got to stay on top of this stuff. These people aren't going to think we're serious about this business. And what are you talking about? Then I have to explain to him the whole what's up mishap and everything. But he's quite upset, right? Because this business is going to be mainly his. He really wants to make it work. Great opportunity for him to start this tourism business, camping in the jungle. And so I have this whole kerfuffle with my son. And then I said, I can't even find that group anymore on my new number. So if you're part of any group WhatsApp groups, okay, when you switch your number, you lose all the groups. Somehow you lose the groups. It remembers the individual contacts you have, and that's because those individual contacts are stored in your contacts on your Apple iPhone, your Apple computer, your Apple iPad. They become part of your contacts, right? The groups don't. So I get my son to add me to the group again, and I send a message. It turns out it wasn't really a tourism thing. It was really an internal message to the natives and stuff. And my wife called one of the people in the junta to see if everything was okay. And she said, yeah, that you're not missing anything important. And then I sent a message out saying, thank you again, and blah, 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 blah. But it was just another one of those things. Right? And my son was furious. He was actually yelling and quite angry. He really wants to make this business work. And then I have a friend who I hadn't spoken to for 3 months or so because there was just a bit, I guess, so let's just say something happened, okay? And then when I put together the EPUB of the Talamanca Review Essays for the Zeitgeist, I sent him a copy of the EPUB through WhatsApp through the old number. And then he messaged me back and couldn't get a hold of me, and then contacted me another way other than WhatsApp a couple days later and said, what's going on here? You don't talk to me for 3 months because we have this argument. You send me your latest book, and then you can't even deem me worthy to respond to my messages. So for the third time, I have to go through this WhatsApp thing. Okay? Just a total friggin' clusterfuck. This whole Mercury retrograde. Worst one I've ever been through. Well, 2018 was pretty bad too. I was doing a border run. Brutal. You don't want to be doing a border run in Mercury retrograde, okay? And I ultimately could not get across the border. And everything that could go wrong did go wrong. So why am I telling you all these things? To let you know that there's this grid system down here, and it's real. Okay? It's absolutely real. If you're paying attention to your life and you're noting patterns and things of this nature, you cannot help but notice the validity of astrology. Now, astrology really doesn't go beyond the astral, but it is the astral, and the astral precedes the physical manifestation. So that's why it has this sort of look of magic, like, oh, how could you have known that, right? And then when you get into Jordan Maxwell and all that stuff and the astrotheology, it's all about the utility of time for maximum personal power, maximum personal profit, maximum personal growth. And it's a sort of a dark utility of astrology, the astrotheology, but there it is. So this is what I went through in the last like week or so. All these things have happened in the last week, which would be about, last 7 days. Well, is it a week? No, like a week and a half, 2 weeks. Like the whole Mercury retrograde, and every single anecdote I've given you has been about travel or communication. It's just been absolutely fucking brutal. Okay? Everything I've gone to do that requires travel or coordinating something by communicating with somebody has completely blown up like a hand grenade in my hands. And this is the Mercury retrograde I've lived through. So I think I'm just going to do a short one tonight. That's good enough. We'll get back to it tomorrow or the next, or maybe I'll take Sunday off. I don't know. I'm going to call this Mercury retrograde. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.